when we're teaching just to academics, we're forgetting there's so much more. It's the emotions, their feelings, how they handle someone walked up and took their marker.
The other thing we do in a Montessori school, though, is we do daily observations of achievement. And so we're doing daily records of materials that have been done, of skills that have been mastered.
Right.
And then we compile all of that all together, quarterly, semi-annually, and then annually.
I love that here at the Montessori program, you explained to me before how when they get to high school, they pick a focus and they can really focus and hone in on that focus and prepare them for what comes next, right?
Yes. So I had the pleasure of meeting you a few months ago and just hearing about your business that you do, your experience, and just your love for families. Just share a little bit more with me about your business, Resilient Roots, and kind of how you got to the point where you are today with it.
Oh, okay. That's a great question, and I'm trying to find just the right place to start.
Yes.
But I've always had a love for children and working with children. In my 20s or so, I wasn't. I was a hairdresser, actually.
Okay.
So
Yes.
I don't think I shared that with you before.
No.
But I was, and just when my son started getting older, I really missed time with him and really wanted to be with him more. And so I was volunteering at his school and those types of things. And so they invited me to come on board on staff there. And that's kind of where it all started, is wanting to be closer to my own child and going into working at his school. And from there, it just, my love for children just grew and grew, along with now my knowledge and education and classes of that, and it transferred to when we moved here to Georgia. I opened a preschool here in McDonough, actually.
Amazing.
At our church at the time, and there I spent the last 13 years. And that's where, when I began that program, it was all about the play-based philosophy that we put a lot of I guess a lot of pressure sometimes. I don't know if there's a better word for it, but on children to kind of know all of these educational skills before they even get into kindergarten. And it's like where we were learning how to read. When we got to kindergarten, now it was like, okay, if you're not reading before kindergarten, you're behind.
Yes.
And for me, I just wanted children to still be a child, but be able to have those skills and be ready. So we put into place a play-based philosophy, which just meant that everything we were doing was very hands-on, which is, I think, some of the way why we associate so well together, too, because Montessori is so hands-on activities, too. And so that's kind of where that began.
Yeah, that's so great. And I love how you shared, what got you into really working with children. And that's motherhood, right?
Right.
And having your own child.
Right, exactly.
Wanting to be close to them and connected. And my mother, Miss Kimberly Morey, who is the founder of Heritage Montessori School, the school I now operate, had a similar path, right? She wanted to be close to my oldest brother, Ben.
Okay.
And she had an opportunity to put him in a Montessori school and just absolutely fell in love with the way that they were teaching, how they were connecting with him and developing him. And then also for myself, that's why I wanted to come into Montessori.
Right.
It wasn't because it was a family business, right? Or I had helped paint or mow the grass at the school.
Right, you helped a lot.
It was when my youngest daughter, was 2.
Okay.
And I realized that she needed a school. And I had just the amazing opportunity of being close enough to see that development. And it just really shifted my perspective on my own life and, really the ability to give back. But your business, Resilient Roots, is kind of founded, on your experience and the life of education you have. What would be some of the core things or major focuses that you feel like your business has in the industry?
I feel like, again, it's going to be teaching those skills that are missing. As I kind of mentioned a little bit, the focus is so academic and making sure that children are prepared for school, that I have a strong pull towards teaching to the whole child. I want to give them the social emotional skills as well to handle when the world's just not going their way.
Yeah. So speak a little bit more about teaching to the whole child. And then, even that term social emotional, right? It's used inaccurately, I believe, in most people's general conversations. But give us a little deeper into what that is.
Okay, so when I say whole child social emotional skills, what I mean is the fact that when we're teaching just to academics, we're forgetting there's so much more. It's the emotions, their feelings, how they handle someone walked up and took their marker. In a child, depending upon the age, that means for them, like, okay, they took my marker, I'm going to push them to get it back, and it just kind of, if they don't have the skill to say, oh, I had that first. Can I have my marker back? Those types of things. And we forget that, we can tell what our own feelings are inside, right? Our own system, and how when someone upsets us, how it makes us feel. And then we work to be able to get those feelings out in a healthy, productive way. But for a child, they just know that this feeling is going on inside, and they don't know what to do with that sometimes. And so if we're not giving them the skills to handle that, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's behavior. Like, all children, no matter where they are, need to be met where they are and learn the skills and how to handle different things that go on around them.
So one of your pillars, I believe you work on, would be adaptive strategies. Kind of share, a little bit about that. Like, what is adaptive strategies? What does that look like in relation to, what you were just talking about?
Okay, so adaptive strategies means, to me, what it means is being able to focus on the individual child. Because, like I mentioned, our systems, some systems shut down, some systems get very emotional. So I want to work and meet that child where they are, so that I can help give them those tools. And sometimes it could be deep breathing, sometimes it could be the words that they need to use, how to recognize what's going on in their body, where instead of immediately pushing someone for that marker, like, how do we stop ourselves and then be able to say, that's my marker. Or for a 2-year-old, it can be putting my hand up and saying stop. So again, to me, adaptive strategies means meeting them where they are and giving them, in simple terms, tools that they can use to kind of navigate the situations that they're in.
Yeah, that's a beautiful explanation of that. How does that connect with self-regulation skills?
So again, that connects to being able to understand how they're feeling, which again, as adults, we have a hard time with that sometimes. So really, we have to really kind of tune into that child and help them learn how to tune into themselves. Some of the ways we can do that is helping them to understand what a feeling is, to share with them, when this is happening, where do you feel it in your body? Do you feel it in your head? Do you feel it in your hands? I see your body is so tight. Those types of things.
So if I have a, let's say a 1 to 3-year-old who I feel like as a parent maybe throws a lot of tantrums or hits or bites or has any number of behaviors that I just don't understand. How would I move ahead on that, or who would I contact? How would I look that up? What does that look like in finding resources?
Right. That's also a really good question, and sometimes a little bit hard to answer because of the fact that there are only so many avenues to reach out. So I would definitely reach out to your pediatrician first. That's where I would start. That's where I've started with my own children with different things when they were young. And then just do your research.
Okay.
And just do research as far as there's lots of play therapies, different therapists, companies like myself where I'm a coach or a consultant that can come in and meet with you and kind of teach and give some of these tools and strategies.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Do you feel like early education schools, are able to address these behaviors? Like they're all the same? Or do you feel like there's differences, right, when choosing an educational option?
I definitely believe there are differences. I mean, there are definitely the schools that, I had a parent who was on a tour with me one time, and we went in and toured a class just in every day, like you've showed me around here, right? Just in every day, opened the door, and she wanted her son to join our school, and she started crying in the classroom, and I took her out and we walked out, and she's like, every school has turned my child down. Like, this is what I've been praying for. And so there's definitely schools that automatically are like, no, I'm sorry. We're not even going to try to let your child come into our school. And then there are schools like yourself who really work to teach to the whole child and give them those experiences and give them the opportunities to understand that we know that you don't have all of those skills and give them the opportunities to learn those skills.
Yes, I love that. And whenever we have a family come into Heritage, it's always better if they just communicate where they are. Right? Meaning, talk about the behaviors, that you're dealing with. Be really open with the educators, or the directors about what you're looking for.
Right.
Because if you aren't honest or open about your goals or your needs for your child, you're not going to be able to gauge whether the school can do it. And you may get 3-6 months down the road and be like, this is just not, what I want. I also love how you said, do your research. I think mothers have they do, right? Have a natural instinct for what is good for your child. And it's okay to take your time, right? To read a couple of books. To spend hours looking up schools and doing all of the tours. My favorite type of family is one that says, I've gone to every school in the area.
Right, right.
And we're here with you. And the reason why I say that is because it shows that you really care. You're really connected with finding what is best for your child.
Right.
And at our school, that's how we find the key to success, is by being really connected with your child. So if you have information, you can get us up to date, you've done research, you have data, it means that we're able to do our job a lot easier, but also it makes it better, to partner with the educators. Another, really kind of neat thing is, one that I've heard, right, and just kind of doing research would be neurodivergent people, okay? And this is kind of like a term, again, that I feel like is misused, it's not used correctly, but, share a little bit with us, like, how neurodevelopment works with our younger children, with our babies. When does that start? When is the key time to be able to really address that? Just, give us some more context in that area.
Right. Using my granddaughter will be a year old in a couple weeks, and I know for her, they have been watching her development from the very beginning. I mean, it starts. I mean, it starts pretty much at birth, soon after birth. I mean, and my children are much older now, and we didn't have to watch all of these milestones so closely, But now I think it's really important to watch. For my granddaughter's example, there were reasons why we were watching, but it also just helped me to remember how important it is the earlier that you catch something, the earlier that you're watching, the earlier that you're talking and noticing things with pediatricians, the earlier you're able to put some different things into place
Yes.
And I'm really impressed too, because pediatricians are noticing it so much more,
Yes.
and asking parents to be so much more aware of what their child is doing.
Yes, yes.
With that being said, I know too that with my granddaughter, we've had to be very careful not to overdo it
Yeah,
as well.
do
Like,
too much,
okay,
yes.
we're a little delayed in crawling, but that's not too delayed yet. You know, when do we
Yes.
need to contact the pediatrician? When do we need to do certain things? And
Yes.
I know she went through a little bit of physical therapy at a young age. But again, it's just really important to continue to do your research, to not put too much stress on that.
Yes.
Because you still want to enjoy your baby and your 1-year-old and your 2-year-old, but just really do your research and really communicate with your pediatrician.
Yeah, yeah. One of the neat things about, you know, child development is our ability to develop and self-regulate. What are some of these self-regulation things that an infant does, you know, let's say between birth and 2 years old?
Yeah. Again, another great question that people do not always think about, and I've forgotten about and been reintroduced to it. But again, we want to try not to fix a baby's problem every minute that they cry, right? Again, I was not good at that. I watched the baby monitor, and back then we didn't have screens. We had just those lights, and they would be going and going. And I'm like talking to my mom on the phone. I'm like, okay, I got to go get my baby. I can't let him cry anymore.
That's right,
you know,
that's right.
15 minutes is all I can do. So I'm not necessarily personally advocating for that, but I am advocating for that you don't have to pick them up immediately. Give them the opportunity to self-soothe. Give them the tools, and just to be able to work with them where they are. And for my granddaughter, I'll just keep using her as an example. She did use a pacifier, right? That's a self-soothing. It can turn into a long-term type of thing that you now have to move off of, right?
Yes, yes.
But for her, what it's turned into is she really just now needs it at nap time and bedtime. So we'll throw 5 pacifiers in there, and she'll go to bed with one. And then when she spits it out and she wakes up, she's crawling around and reaching, and she'll find a few more and put them back in and self-soothe and go right back to sleep.
Yes, yes, that's amazing. And so, you know, for a child who's learning to self-soothe between 1 and 2, and then a child who's picked up every minute,
Right.
what does that transition into in both of those cases, you know, let's say when a child is between 5 and 6?
Right. It can transfer into the 5 and 6-year-old not knowing how to self-soothe, not knowing how to, again, I use this term a lot, handle when the world is just not going their way. It just turns into their system gets immediately out of whack because they don't know how to handle the moment that they're in, and they're looking for someone to save them.
Yes, yes. And what would on the positive end of that look like? Let's say a child who did learn how to self-soothe between 1 and 2, you know, continued that development, now they're 5 and 6. What would you see from a child, you know, who's had that type of experience?
Who's a 5 and 6, I would say that hopefully what they've learned is to have a voice and to be able to speak and use their words to be able to handle when the world is not going their way. And again, in a way that is good for a 5 or 6-year-old to use, right? But to be able to at least say, wait, I had that first. You know, next time ask me for that. And if they've been building these skills all along, then they get to be that age and they can say, next time ask me.
Yeah. I love how you just brought in communication because it's one of the core things that we teach in, I would say, early childhood education, but specifically in Montessori education, we're using full sentences, we're using very large vocabulary or adult vocabulary. We don't do baby talk. And we do that because setting an example encourages the children to better move in that direction. But also to deal with most of our social emotional developmental stages, if we're lacking in communication, there's almost always a correlation, right, between success in these other areas, whether it be academic success, whether it be conflict resolution, our independence, you know, our executive function skills. I mean, all of these things are so directly correlated to our ability to communicate with the world. Another cool thing I'd like to just dig into would be the conflict resolution skills. You talked a little bit earlier about, you know, a kid who gets their pencil taken, right? And then they push them back, right? Because it's like, hey, why did you do that? But there's no words, right? It's just a physical, you know, response. So, you know, share a little bit more about the importance of those conflict resolution skills. You know, what would be some strategies that you would kind of implement in that type of situation for children?
Right. So I can use like examples from my preschool days, okay? Because one, the child has to have some communication. So if they haven't had it, it's a little bit harder. But what we would generally do is focus on the child whose item was taken first, because where we put our focus, right, shows our importance. So it's not going to be on the child who did this, it's going to be on the child it was done to. And we're going to help that child have a big voice and say, I don't like that. And then we're going to help the other student understand that if you want something, this is how you ask for it. And we're going to model that in both ways with both students.
And that's just a really great, you know, thing to do. You know, I always like to say with families who have like one child, right? It's just a single child household, that you really need to put your student into situations where they're having to work around other children. And one of the main reasons is because of that conflict resolution skill. If they don't have to interact with anyone at their level, let's say for 6 years while they've been here on the earth, it's going to be such a shock receiving that type of interaction from someone who has zero to little ability to meet their needs, as opposed to just dealing with their parents who have the highest level of ability of social emotional regulation, communication skills. So essentially you're just answering all of the problems for your child. And what I hear when I have a child that comes in and is like, I can't believe my kid pushed someone else. They've never done that at home. And I make this correct. But also in your home, there is none of these things that exist. There's not an opportunity for this level of conflict in your home. Even your pet dog is still a dog. He knows his master. He's going to leave. He's going to go lay down. You can put him outside. And so it's really important for us as parents to really dig into conflict resolution and to not hide our children from it. I think a lot of our parents in today's world hide those types of challenges from their students, and the first time that they come up, they just panic. It's just absolute panic. And I think there's a lot of fear, that really exists with that. But why do you think a parent would be so worried about their child pushing someone else? Why do you think that's such a large trigger point for a parent?
Well, again, thinking back to when my boys were younger and I didn't quite have all of these skills yet, when I was a young mom, it was embarrassing. It was going to be embarrassing. It was going to be, okay, my child is pushing someone, but their children aren't, and then I'm going to be looked at a different way. As far as a parent's perspective, I think that plays a big part there. So instead of saying, well, at home, when they don't get the cereal that they wanted, they get very upset. And so I give them the cereal that they want, right? Because you can still teach conflict resolution even in a house without other children. But because it's easier with an only child in the home, you can go ahead and do those types of things. And so for that child, they get there and they don't know what to do besides push the other child. And so I think that it's hard to acknowledge, like, wait, that totally confuses me because I've never seen my child do that. Why would my child do that? And if my child is doing that, what does that say about my child? What's others thinking about him?
Thank you. That really clarifies a lot, in those types of situations. Another really interesting thing that I think is just a hot topic in today's world is some families are choosing to keep their kids at home entirely.
Right.
And it, at least for the early education years,
Right.
but some are even doing that the entire journey. All 18s like saying, nope, we're not going into that way. We're keeping our child in our home.
Right.
What would be, some of the benefits you feel like of doing that, right? Of taking that route and saying, hey, I'm going to keep my kid at home.
To a homeschool type of thing is what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we've talked about this either, or if you know this, but I homeschooled my children for a number of years. Yes. So, so we made a joke that when my youngest son went to high school, I went back to the classroom. I went to preschool. So that's when I started my preschool.
Okay.
So for him, it was first grade up through 7th grade. So he went into high school. Well,
That's
8th grade, I guess. So he went into high school. And then my oldest son did a few years at home and then did a co-op type of program for high school. So I think there are definitely benefits to it. The benefits for my family, I will say, and or possibly benefits for others, is that I could teach them in the way that they learned best.
Yes.
I didn't have to put them in a classroom where you need to catch up and be where every other student is.
Yes.
And that also goes back to my belief of the play-based philosophy and teaching to the whole child, teaching in the way that works best for them.
Yes.
We can't always do that in certain schools or all classrooms, right?
Yeah.
So for me, that was a benefit. What we had to watch then, and what I would recommend all families watch that choose that, is the social interactions as well. Make sure that they are being challenged. I love that here at the Montessori program, you explained to me before how when they get to high school, they can pick a focus and they can really focus and hone in on that focus and prepare them for what comes next, right?
Yes.
So I think that's a benefit to homeschool. Like that's what you do in those situations as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. And so on the other side of that, though, let's say we have a dual parent household. We're both working parents, or maybe I'm a single parent, and I have to work a 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. and then pull overtime.
Right.
What are the benefits of putting your child in, a traditional, daycare and then, traditional school for, for the life of that?
Right. I think there's a lot of great benefits there too. Like you mentioned, especially for those families that are still very involved at home and very involved in the school program, they get the social skills a little bit easier. They learn conflict resolution depending upon the program that they're in. They're learning their academics. They're hopefully being hands-on and structure. They're getting a little bit of everything in some ways during their day.
And so when I was kind of doing a little bit of research and just looking up what I could find, comparing the two. And what was interesting is one of the only negatives that I saw consistently show up for homeschooled children would be their testing scores or academic performance. But what I also find interesting about that is they're only able to pull data from a traditional school.
Right.
They're not able to pull test data. Let's say my kid can open a bank account at the age of 6. They can balance a checkbook.
Right.
They run their own company and they're selling, smoothies, right? Every Saturday.
Right.
And so, it seemed like in looking at the data, all of the data was really geared towards a traditional measuring model. But as we know, you could be very successful in preschool, elementary school, middle school, high school, all the way through, either homeschool or in traditional, and then stay at home between the ages of 25 and 35.
Right.
And and maybe that's great for you. Maybe that's, as a parent, that's what you set out for, for your child. But I just find that really interesting that the only measuring stick was really test scores.
Right. That is interesting.
Do you feel like the test score model is still something that a lot of parents are looking for, or kind of using as a measuring goal for their children?
I personally think that a lot of parents are still doing that.
Yeah.
Even though my belief is the fact is that test scores aren't always accurate.
Yeah.
I mean, you put someone someone can test well doesn't necessarily mean that they have all of those skills. It means they can test in that area in that way. So to say for a young child, right, they can recognize their ABCs, right? They can recognize the alphabet if they see it here. But if they turn around and see it in a different way, they see it in a different location, are they still going to understand it? So again, you can know how to count and you can count certain things, but that doesn't mean that transfers over to I have 5 items and I understand that this is a 5. So again, the testing scores to me aren't always accurate. And then my son, my oldest, is 33. I get his age wrong sometimes, so I had to think and make sure I had it right. So if he sees this, I don't get in trouble. But at 33, he did a dual program type of thing, homeschool and going into an academy to take classes. And I had to test him. Those tests were still turned in, but those tests were different. I mean, they were still important tests.
Of course.
And they still had to be proxied, but they were different probably than he still had to take a standardized testing, all of those types of things. But the testing just isn't accurate. I don't personally believe that shows a good balance either way.
And I'll go right behind you right there and say it emphatically does not. There is so much more data out there that says standardized testing does not equate to success or measurement of skills. And one of the main reasons is because the test always changes, meaning the goalpost changes. And the reasons why we take tests generally are those standards are set by very large entities, whether it be our federal government or whether it be a college board. And so the reasons why they set these test scores are directly tied to money. Financial gain is a very unfortunate thing that has whittled down the value of our test scores. I'll give you a good example. Is here in Georgia, we have steadily reduced our standards or made them less lacking year and year and year over the past 10 years. And Georgia schools have steadily fallen in alignment nationally to our lowering of our state standards. So we can still have a B grade school in the state of Georgia. And 10 years ago, it was a B grade school. But 10 years ago, we were ranked 10 to 15 places higher nationally. And so those metrics just are never in alignment. And so what I encourage parents to do is if you are going to rely heavily on testing, and this is what you believe in as a parent, enter your child into a nationally recognized standardized test where the measuring goal doesn't change because of where you live. It's using this set of standards that doesn't change year after year after year. You can go back 10 years on the data or potentially use that info to go 10 years into the future and really gauge where your child is. The other thing we do in a Montessori school, though, is we do daily observations of achievement. And so we're doing daily records of materials that have been done, of skills that have been mastered. And then we compile all of that all together quarterly, semi-annually, and then annually to actually depict where are the structured gains instead of picking these days in a calendar year and saying, well, today's the day. But if I just lost my dog the night before, or I just got over having the flu, or grandma, moved recently, I'm not going to do well on my test. And so there's no real way to take a snapshot in time and say that this is the summation, of your child's skill and development. What would kind of be some things that you would say, really impact a family and their level of success, whether it be like income or education? Are there some things that you've kind of seen over your years that you feel like really impact whether or not a family can manage some of the more difficult things of raising up children?
Ooh, that's kind of a hard one. I'm trying to think for a second and see where I want to go here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I did a little bit of basic research, and some of the core ones that come up is income, right? Obviously,
Right.
money is something that people say, data says, if you don't have the money,
Right.
you don't have the access. Is that something that you've kind of seen, in your experience?
I can't say that I've necessarily seen that as much in my experience, but I do hear that. I mean,
Okay.
it does make sense that,
Yeah.
families that are working hard to put food on the plate, right? It's harder for them to pick a different school or to go outside of the school that their child is maybe zoned for, whether they want them to be there or not,
Yes.
type of things.
Yes.
So I can see how, getting help for their child in different ways, whether it's tutoring or some type of therapy for something different, those things can definitely be harder for parents.
I would definitely agree with you that in my experience, it's not necessarily the income. It's that second thing that you said, which is getting help.
Right.
Getting help.
Yeah.
And, for the families that I see that struggle, whether they have lots of money or not,
Right.
they struggle because of
Right.
the unwillingness to get help,
Right.
the unwillingness to reach out,
Right.
to be, just kind of humble, right, in that experience. Because I feel like in this world that we're in now, and the way that we have, access to information at our fingertips, if you're willing to ask the questions, and you're willing to reach out to let's say, someone like you, or even like my school, I will meet with you. I will give you a tour and talk to you and give you my wealth of knowledge without charging you.
Right.
And I think the foundation, core of our industry is really built on just loving people, and just sharing the education. In your experience, for a child that you see receiving early intervention or early education services, and then seeing them as an adult, what would be some of those correlations, or changes that you kind of see, in a child that received services and really needed them, and a child that really needed them and for whatever reason did not receive anything at all?
Right. So I go back to something that I was told to me by my pediatrician with my oldest son. Maybe I shouldn't have said that on here, but anyway, but he won't mind.
Yeah.
But with one of my sons, he has ADD. And when we were young parents, it was, okay, wait, okay, they're just going to want to put him on medicine and, all of those types of things. So we really struggled with that, right?
Yeah.
But working with the pediatrician, he sat with my husband and I and shared with us, the truth is that if you don't get your child help, they're going to grow up and feeling like they can't do it right.
Got it.
And therefore that can lead down paths that we don't want our children to go down, right?
Yes.
Paths that can really affect them as adults.
Yes.
And that has always really stuck with me as far as working with families and with children. It's like, I'm going to share with you. That doesn't mean that I'm saying your child is different than any other child as far as how they're loved, how they're cared for, how special they are, how God made them.
Yes.
But if we give them these skills, that's going to make all the difference within them.
Yes, yes, I love that. And the fact that you have experience, dealing with it in your own life, I believe really gives you, a nice platform, where you can really speak into their life. It is a very difficult thing to hear, as a parent.
It is.
And whether it's something severe or even it's, my kid is pushing at school.
Right.
We have this natural desire to defend.
Right.
And to protect from any misguided labeling, or something of that nature. But I'm really hopeful with the families that we have, because I've seen a shift generally overall in this new age of families, like with kids who are 5, 6, and younger,
Right.
of being really open and much more understanding to exactly what you're saying, which is, hey, we're the professionals, we're here to love you, we're here to
Right.
help you, you can trust us, as opposed to, I think, like when I was being raised up, I don't think that trust was really existent
Right.
in the space.
Right.
I think there was much more fear that existed in
I agree.
any type of diagnosis or
Right.
any type of therapy. I mean,
Yes.
really, like
Yes.
anything
Definitely.
outside of just my kid is great.
Right. Right.
was like
Right.
absolutely, absolutely terrifying. And it's one of the reasons why my mother was motivated to move into Montessori, was a similar conversation she had, with a pediatrician that said, your son's going to have to be put on Ritalin, and this is the only way, right, that he's going to
Right.
be able to function.
Right.
And so she had to take a step back and go, well, function where?
Right.
Because if
True.
you want my kid to sit down and be quiet and say yes ma'am all day,
Right.
my kid can't do that
Right.
because my kid's not built for that. My kid needs movement. My kid needs to pick things up. They're a very hands-on, tactile learner. And so if my mother wouldn't have followed her intuition and done her own research, maybe she would have been recommended to do something that was against that.
Right.
And so, that's why I try to really encourage families, like, yes, be trusting, right? But also go see someone else.
Right.
Right? There's tons of
Yeah,
doctors.
yes.
And you can see a doctor that'll, I always make this kind of joke. It's not that funny, but it happens all the time. You can go see a doctor about, a lump you have, and they'll say, oh, it's cancer. We need to cut it out tomorrow, and we're going to go ahead and schedule it. And you can go see another doctor next week, and they go, oh, no, we don't need to do that. Drink
Right.
some water, exercise, and here's some natural medicine
Right.
to take, and you can get to a resolution. So I share that story just to be very encouraging to families. No matter what you hear from a doctor, from a school, really from anybody, there's always another opinion out there,
Right.
And you have a right as a mom or a dad to take as much time as you need to really walk through all of the options, and if you have a doctor or a medical professional or an educator that is like, you have to do it now, you have to do it now, you have to do it now.
Right.
And they're not open to the idea of additional support, additional ideas, additional resources, I would bail on that person.
Right. Right.
Because it shows that they don't have the empathy, one, for your situation, or they don't have the time,
Agreed.
or they think they know it all. And all three of those just don't work out with
Right.
kids. They're all so
They're all
very different. And
Individual.
it's just such an important thing, that I feel like we really miss out on sometimes as educators.
Yes, I would agree. I recently, just last week, sat across the table from a mom of a almost 2-year-old and a 3-month-old and saying, I need help. I'm a young mom and I don't know what I'm doing, and that is hard to be able to sit and do and sit across the table from a stranger and say, I don't know how to do this. And, I want to make sure I'm giving him the skills that he needs.
Yes, ma'am. And so, in your business and kind of what you do with Resilient Roots, like what are some of the ways or options, that you provide to families? Let's say somebody Googles social emotional development help.
Right.
And your website comes up.
Right.
What are the choices for them, right? To be able to connect with you, hear from you, learn more.
Right. Well, thank you for asking that question. One thing that I do is helping schools in different ways. So like you and I will be working together as far as coaching some parents and working together for that. So one, they can get sometimes parent education or through their school, depending upon. So that's what I'm working on there. But then also I do hands-on coaching where I can come into the home and work with a family and work with that student and again, meet them where they are. And we will go ahead and make a plan and work on these things, work on, 2 or 3 things at a time, because just like us, if you went in to try to fix everything that I needed to fix within myself all at once, it would be too much, right?
Yes.
So we'll pick something, make a plan, and then I work with the child and with the parent. Because when I walk away, I want the parent to have that same confidence and ability and tools to work with their child as well.
Yes.
Also, things like what I'm going to do for you, table talks, I offer those into the community.
Okay.
I reach out and work with different homeschool groups as well. So if there's a group like that wanted to kind of do for the whole group and not just individually, because sometimes parents are going to hear it in a group setting more than being like, okay, I need a stranger to come into my home or meet me at the park, type of thing.
Yeah, that's really beautiful that, one, you offer those services, and you're just so genuine. I would really just share to people out there, if they're looking for real help, make sure you find somebody who's really there to help.
Right.
Who's really there to love and to be kind. There's so many options out there that are overly clinical. And in the clinical field, they teach you to not have empathy.
Right.
1 in your function, and then 2 in what you offer. And so, I would just share, find somebody who has a heart like you.
Oh,
right?
Well, thank you.
That picks up the phone, and really cares and is wanting to get to know you, because it's just going to set you, in just a better direction.
Well, thank you.
But what would be the most important thing, that you would share with a young family who's got a new child or dealing with difficulties? Like, what would be a tip or trick or something that you would share with them that would be helpful, or
Right.
encouraging, kind of in their journey?
That's a good one too. You've asked me a lot of good questions today.
Yes.
But I think I would remind them that we've all been there, and that none of us are perfect. None of us are perfect. And that, I use this example as well. It's kind of like on an airplane, right? What are we supposed to do? Put on our mask first before we can help someone beside us, right?
Okay.
And I think that sometimes in those moments when your child is upset or when you don't know what to do, it really is those deep breaths. And when I was younger and didn't understand and people would say that to me, I thought that was ridiculous. How is standing here and taking 10 deep breaths going to help me?
Yes.
But now, because I've done it so much with children, like my deep breaths, you can see them a mile away. It's obvious, because that's what I have to do to teach a child, right? And so I believe in that now. Like, you have to have the calm within before you can help. And we all make mistakes, and we get to say oops, and we get to try it again.
Yeah. That's just so beautiful of how you kind of tied all that together. What comes to mind for me is just having grace for yourself. And being able to take that moment, again, just to pause and to breathe. Because when you're healing and you're teaching and you're leading, which is what we're doing with our kids all the time, 24/7,
Yes.
it takes a lot of grace for
Right.
them. And if we're able to give it away, then we can get in front of a mirror and we can give it away.
Right.
But that's also a skill. Like you said, you tried it when you're younger. It's like, oh man, this is so hard.
This is a waste of time.
It's like, why is this so hard? Why can't I not look in the mirror and go, hey, yeah, I love you.
Right.
Yeah, it's going to be okay.
Right.
But it's because we're not really taught it when we're younger all the time.
Right.
And so the greatest thing I think that we can do as parents is, if we can teach it to ourselves and we can walk it out for us, we can start there.
Right.
Whether we're a child, whether we're middle-aged, whether we're a young adult, or 70 years old.
Right. Exactly.
Then we're much more likely to be able to do it for someone else and just be a better teacher.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I have really enjoyed having you here today. I feel like your just wealth of knowledge is just so incredible. I'm really excited to have our table talks and have you be here at the school over this summertime and into next school year. Go ahead and just share, how people can get in contact with you, either your website or, any last things that you want to leave with our listeners.
Okay, great. Well, you can get in touch with me through social media, and then also on there you will find my email address as well. So that would be the best way to get in touch with me.
Amazing,
yeah.
Amazing. All right, everybody, we just finished up an amazing interview here with Resilient Roots. We had a great conversation about children, raising families, and being the best parent out there. If you've really enjoyed this video, make sure that you do something for us here at Chasing Heritage and you like and subscribe. This allows you to get notices first up whenever we have new listeners come onto the show, or new interviewees come onto the show. As always, thank you for joining, and we'll see you next time on Chasing Heritage.